Hello and welcome to the Federal. I am Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay and you are watching Off the Beaten Track, a program in which we take a 360-degree look at a very important issue that is gripping the nation. Today we will be talking about the Ram Temple because in a matter of few days, it is going to be formally inaugurated to Hindu devotees to go and visit the temple. Now, if we actually look at it, this is possibly the most epochal event happening in India ever since the partition, that is the Independence Day and partition. The reason why I am referring to these two events in 1947, because thereafter there has not been any sustained movement over so many decades. By and large, even though the Indian National Congress was formed in 1885 and we had the uprising in 1857, it is essentially only the last three and a half, 4 decades of the national movement that actually led to the independence of India. Similarly, right from mid-1980s, the Ram Janmabhoomi Andolan, as they had officially called it, was started, and after long gaps at various places, the temple was finally, construction began in the middle of the pandemic, and we are going to be happening and opening. Even though, let me remind people, the full temple has not yet been constructed. This is being timed essentially with the elections in mind. Now, such a grand event obviously means a lot of things to different kinds of people. There is one kind of meaning being drawn by the people who are Hindus and who happen to be the supporters of what we call the Sangh Parivar. There is another set of Hindus who are religious but are not ideological supporters of Hindutva. For them, the inauguration of the Ram temple is going to mean differently. There's also an important section of Hindus who are not believers in religion, who are atheists or agnostics. And let me give a disclaimer that I am one of them who's actually not a religious fanatic Hindu in any way. I have my own sense of spiritualism, but that is completely different. There's also a different kind of reaction would be there from different minorities. The Christians would be reacting differently to the Muslims or other religious minorities, likewise the other. Even within the Muslims, there would be different types of responses or their perception to what is happening. So we will be talking about all these issues, what it means. Why do I call it an epochal event? You might all disagree. My guest today, Ziya Us Salam, who is a very senior journalist, associate editor with The Hindu, and he may also disagree with certain formulations of my mind, but the intention is basically to have a discussion on the subject. A slight disclaimer needs to be made from my side. For the last almost 4 decades, I have written on the Ram Temple agitation. I have written 2 books on the subject. The first one was published exactly 30 years ago in January 1994, and my last book on the same issue, which is titled, you can see both the books behind me, The Demolition, the Ram Temple. It's actually, I call it Reconfigures India. So I have a known position on that. Ziya Us Salam, Ziya Bhai, welcome to this program. And thank you very much for coming and joining me on this.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Let me start with something, which actually I have always quoted in the years that I have written. It is not that Ram was essentially only the ideal person of the Hindus of the country. Way back in the 1930s, 40s, around that time, Allama Iqbal, the poet, famous poet, whose song we still, Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara, we still sing with a tremendous amount of passion without actually being on which side of the political divide. He had written a line, 2 lines, a couplet. Hai Ram ke wajood pe Hindustan ko naaz, ahle nazar samajhte hain usko Imam-e-Hind. India is proud of the existence of Ram. Spiritual people consider him a prelate of India or a spiritual guide of India. From that time onwards, the Ram temple, which is being built now, and the Ram that is being talked about by the Sangh Parivar, many would argue that the projection of Ram has completely differed from what Allama or the Iqbal had in mind at that particular time. Is that argument
See,
correct?
as an Indian, as a man who grew up in Delhi, in my childhood, I often used to come across devout people, so believers going to temple in the morning and greeting each other, saying Ram Ram. And they would say it to me also and to other Muslims also, and without even bothering about the fact that Ram was so-called a Hindu deity, every Muslim would also respond in the same manner.
Right.
Ram Ram. And then there were some people who would remember Sita too, and they would say Jai Siya Ram, and people will reciprocate in the same coin. It was only with the Babri Masjid Ram Janmabhoomi agitation that Ram became a political figure. He was never a divisive figure in India. I don't recall any riot in medieval India, so to say, when Muslims were here in the name of Ram. When any Ram Navami procession was stoned or any such violence took place, it was only post 1989-90 that violence started in the name of Ram, and he became a very divisive figure on the political map and also a political weapon for the BJP. And so much so that the many of the common Hindus forgot that earlier in their mornings used to begin with Namaskar or Ram Ram or Jai Siya Ram. They started saying Ramchandra ki Jai and Jai Ram, Jai Shri Ram and all those things.
Jai Ram
This
Ji
was
ki.
largely thanks to L.K. Advani. As M.J. Akbar had also mentioned in his book, probably the best book he has done in his career, Riot After Riot, that Jai Shri Ram became a war cry right from that time. And if you went to political circles,
This,
people would invariably greet a namaskar with Jai Shri Ram and so on. Today, it has become a weapon to torment, to torture, and even to kill minorities.
right. Let me ask you very directly, now that the temple is being inaugurated with tremendous amount of political fanfare, what do you think is or can you explain to us what is the general sense and the mood, the apprehensions and the appreciation among various categories of Muslims? Or is there one all-encompassing response from the Muslims?
I guess the common Muslim at the moment is, I won't say indifferent. There is this lingering fear of violence. There is that apprehension that anything could happen at any time. And there have been notes exchanged on WhatsApp groups within the families and the larger Muslim community that do not take a train at that time to UP.
Right.
Do not drive alone if you have a beard or if you wear a hijab and so on. So there is this lurking fear in the Muslim community that anything could happen in the name of Ram. People have not forgotten 1992, and for a vast section of the community it is like reopening an old wound. They do believe that okay, there was a mosque, and even the Supreme Court agreed that the mosque was not built on after demolition of a Ram temple. But today the temple is certainly coming up at the site where the Babri Masjid stood. So
Mm.
there was this element of doubt whether Babri Masjid was built after demolishing a temple, but there is certainly no element of doubt that Ram temple in Ayodhya is being built after demolition of Masjid. So there is this anger and there is apprehension within the Muslim community. And I don't think the community is divided on this subject.
There was a section within the Muslim community who were very responsive and positive about the Supreme Court judgment in November 2019. Given the fact that the Supreme Court judgment spoke about very highly about the Places of Worship Act and actually clearly said that Ayodhya is a different issue. It also talked about the illegality of both the action of installation of the idol in December 1949 and again the demolition of the Babri Masjid in December 1992. Despite saying that it was illegal, the site property was handed over to the Hindu side, and the government was instructed to set up a trust which would be given charge of running and first of all constructing and then running the temple. At that point, a lot of Muslims felt that, okay, this would possibly, given the Supreme Court judgment, put a full stop to this temple-mosque dispute which has been going on for the last...
There was that feeling of closure.
Sorry?
There was
Yes,
that feeling of
that's
closure.
the exact word which we use, that there was a sense that there is going to be a closure. But in the last, almost 4 years, 4 years plus, we have seen that there has not been any closure. More and more openings are being made. Even as we speak, we do not know whether the trial court in Varanasi, which is listening to the property dispute, what we call the civil suit, is the judge there preparing the judgment, deciding that whether the Gyanvapi mosque is to be handed over to the Hindu claimants or not. Likewise, there are developments going on in Mathura. There are claims being made even on a mosque within the Qutub Minar complex. There's also the festering sore at Madhya Pradesh in Bhojshala. Various other, through the agitation of the Ram Janmabhoomi movement, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad had put out a list of several hundred, that's close to about 1,000 mosques, which they say were built after demolishing a temple, and that a Hindu temple, and that they would want to take it back one by one. So it appears to be an endless process. That is what is appearing. So how are the Muslims at this point reacting to this possibility?
See, there is this feeling of anger, and this time around, one is not too sure how the Muslim community would react if the, as you said, Gyanvapi thing were to go on and the mosque was to be handed over to the Hindu petitioners, or something similar in Mathura or Qawwatul Islam in Delhi. There is this feeling that India has betrayed us, that the law, that India has betrayed us, that the judiciary has betrayed us. The Supreme Court, as you rightly said, very clearly pointed out that the Babri Masjid case was a separate case, and there was this Places of Worship Act very much in place. And after that, for the courts at various levels to entertain those petitions against various mosques and whatever the camouflage they use or whatever excuse they use, it by itself goes against the letter and spirit of the Supreme Court's Babri Masjid judgment, which the Muslim community accepted in the spirit of things according to the law of the land, and there was no hard feeling towards any community after the judgment was given by the Supreme Court in November 2019. But since mid of 2020, more and more mosques are being targeted by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and sundry other Hindu organizations, leaving the common Muslim feeling that he is watching Babri Masjid case all over again. Whatever happened in 1949 and then in the 80s and 92, he is watching it all over again from 2020 to 23 in the case of Gyanvapi or Qawwatul Islam or Shahi Eidgah in Mathura or Madhya Pradesh or other mosques in UP, notably Tilewali Masjid in Lucknow, Masjid in Badaयूं, and so on. There is this erosion of faith in the country as such, in the nation as such, and certainly the faith in the judiciary has been shaken by the very fact that surveys have been ordered and cases are being heard at various levels by different courts. And even when the Muslim community has gone to the Supreme Court has not put a full stop to those surveys or to those petitions at the first stage itself. It's like gradually things are building up for yet another Babri in Kashi, yet another Babri in Mathura. And the Muslim community could not be more angry than this.
In your latest book, you have written several, your latest book, which is very pointedly titled Being Muslim in Hindu India, a critical view. You are among those writers who does not beat around the bush. You are very honest and frank with your analysis and with your narration and how you actually trace the events. You actually start out with a very powerful line, the very first line, which actually is very compelling, and we must actually look at it, that the contemporary Muslim in India today feels like an orphan.
Yes.
Now, the sense of
Absolutely.
being reduced, I want you to explain a bit that, so why do you say that there is a sense of being an orphan, in this country? After all, constitutionally, everybody is entitled to follow their own faith, regardless of what the others say.
See,
There's a
the
constitution.
constitution says something, and the ground reality says quite another. We have cases of the UP chief minister asking bureaucrats to shower rose petals on kavarias.
Hmm.
We have cases in the same state and other places also, where Muslims have been arrested for merely praying on a bench on a railway platform. A Muslim woman was given a warning for praying in the basement of a hospital where her relative was admitted, and she was praying for his well being. Muslims have been arrested for quietly offering their prayers in a train or a bus where all Navratra celebrations are allowed. We have seen visuals of what happens at Ahmedabad airport during Navratra celebrations. We have seen how the government has come down hard on azan and on prayers, say on the pavement in the park, whereas the same parks are used for RSS shakhas every day. So there are different yardsticks for different communities at the moment. But to say that it all boils down to what the BJP is doing would be very simplistic. The
Right.
fact of the matter is Hindutva is driving the political discourse of the country. And thanks to the fear of the BJP, even the so-called secular parties have taken recourse to soft Hindutva, wherein they are not coming out to support the Muslims even when Muslims are a victim. You won't recall the last occasion any political leader of, say, the Congress party or Samajwadi or Bahujan Samaj party went to the house of a lynching victim, offered them support, promised them job or anything like that. And gradually, the tickets given by different political parties to Muslims at the time of elections are coming down. And it is not just about the BJP or the Congress, even the regional parties like AIADMK, DMK, NCP, BRS, etc., are shy of giving tickets to Muslims. So, on the one hand, we have BJP, which has been aggressively and overtly anti Muslim in its activities, in its actions, or at least the organizations close in ideology to the BJP. On the other hand, we have the so-called secular parties taking the same route of soft Hindutva. And I wonder what is wrong. What is the difference between an out and out devil and a so-called lesser devil? Muslims today are having to choose between a belligerent devil and a tacit devil. So where is the law machinery, where is the political mechanism to support the Muslims today?
Mhm. The agitation for the Ram temple was actually started in September 1984. Now, that is when the first yatra was taken out from Sitamarhi in Bihar. It was called Ram Janki Rath Yatra, which started, and they were supposed to come to Delhi and petition the Prime Minister of that time, Indira Gandhi. They arrived on the outskirts of the city on the 31st of October. On the 30th of October and on the 31st of October, they were supposed to go and give the petition. Indira Gandhi was assassinated in the morning, and then the agitation had to be put in cold storage because of the political turbulence that happened when the Sikhs became the targeted minorities in the country. September, after that, from 1985, there was several other developments, including most importantly, the Shah Bano judgment of the Supreme Court, And there, the Muslim orthodoxy at that point raised objections to the Supreme Court judgment, saying that it was interfering into personal matters of the Muslim community in the minorities. So, the verdict was changed, was nullified. And then it is the general argument is that in a tit for tat compromise, they gave the Muslim orthodoxy, nullification of the Shah Bano judgment, and to appease the Hindus, they opened up the Babri Masjid and opened the gates for the Hindus to go and pray. Now, this tit for tat, trying to compromise with conservative forces in both communities, do you actually accept this argument? How do you look at it?
See, two wrongs do not make a right. We all know that. But having said that, Shabano verdict and whatever happened in the political circles after that was completely condemnable. The way Rajiv Gandhi government went out of its way to circumvent the judgment of the court, excuse me, to circumvent the judgment of the court. And then, as you said, they opened the lock of the Babri Masjid. But the Babri Masjid thing was almost inevitable, as you have also written in one of your books. There was this yatra from Sitamarhi to Delhi, and Vishwa Hindu Parishad was very confident that even the death of Indira Gandhi will not derail their journey. So it merely was postponed by a few months, and there was an inevitability to it. I think it's very simplistic to link Shah Bano and Babri Masjid on the same page. The Babri Masjid movement, in many ways, or rather Ram Janmabhoomi movement, in many ways, was a fallout of the failure of the Gaur Sabhas and Gaur Rakshani movement of the 60s, when the RSS realized that the common Hindu was not joined in the manner they wanted, when they wanted people to come out in the street in lakhs and lakhs of numbers. When that movement failed, then they took recourse to revival of the Babri Masjid agitation, and it is much easier to unite people in the name of Ram than in the name of the cow. Because after all, we do know that Ram is worshipped in South India also, just as he is worshipped in North India. But cow is not considered sacred in parts of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Northeast India. So it was much easier to mobilize the common Hindu in the name of Ram than the cow. And that is why there was an inevitability to the Ram Janmabhoomi stir, irrespective of the Shah Bano verdict, irrespective of the death or assassination of Indira Gandhi. Where I would hold the Congress responsible is there was this very strong streak within the Congress all along to accommodate Hindutva, to accommodate Hindu right wing within the party. It and goes right back to 1910s, 1920s, 30s, etc. during our freedom struggle. That is why we saw people like Madan Mohan Malviya, Lal Rai, etc. rising to top rising to top positions in the Congress, and whatever Bal Gangadhar Tilak and others had said at the time of partition of Bengal, all that is well documented. So what happened in the 80s with Rajiv Gandhi, a relatively new politician, so to say, this particular streak of Congress virtually became the decision maker within the party. And the ultimate proof of that came when Narasimha Rao became the prime minister. And despite the advice of his bureaucrats, he refused to dismiss the Kalyan Singh government, refused to cordon off the area of Babri Masjid, despite all the advice, till the time Babri Masjid was demolished. Only after then he dismissed the state government. So Congress can in no way be pardoned for its role in the demolition of Babri Masjid. It might wear the cloak of secularism today or lesser evil, but Congress has played its part in the entire agitation.
In the course of the Ayodhya agitation, we have seen a lot of falsification of history by the Sangh Parivar and its various organizational,
They did it all around, not just Ayodhya.
So not just Ayodhya, every history, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as late as June 2023, while making us giving an address at the U.S. Congress, he talked about the medieval era of India as 1,000 years of slavery, as some kind of a, dark. Even in his election speeches, he's always used the phrase "1200 saal ki gulami," which he started
He said
using.
the same thing in 2014 when he entered the parliament.
Exactly. He, in fact, in the run up to the 2012 elections, when I was actually working on his biography, I actually heard him use this phrase of Bara Saal ki Gulami in a public speech in Surat as far back as 2012. Now, when the entire medieval period is erased and is represented as being a period of subjugation of Hindus, how does the Muslim community, also the Muslim, intellectuals, look at this kind of falsification?
See, as a Muslim, as a person from the community, I never regarded the so-called Muslim period as a Muslim period. For me, they were just Mughals or Sultanate rulers, and also there is this problem with the narration of our history that inevitably greater attention is spent on kings of North India in comparison to South India. Okay, just when we had Delhi Sultanate here and we had Mughals here, we also had Bijapur and Golconda rulers over there who were Muslims, and we had Vijayanagar Empire who were Hindus. So, and all the rulers.
Let me add one thing. Even when you had various Muslim emperors sitting in the capital, whether it was Delhi or anywhere else in North India, the ruling class, those who were collaborating with them, with the emperor to retain power, were actually local Hindu kings
Yeah, and also
all over
these,
what is considered India
these
and
so-called
parts
Muslim
of
rulers,
Pakistan today.
these so-called Muslim rulers were ruling under the name of their dynasty. They wanted to aggrandize their own kingdom, their own empire. They were not ruling for Islam or according to Islam. They were just incidental Muslims, most of them. For instance, we take the case of Alauddin Khalji. Alauddin Khilji came up with the best possible market reforms against hoarding, against black marketing, and protected our country against Mongol invasions a couple of times. And his empire reached right up to Deccan. But he was a guy who did not know a word about Sharia. He was not a practicing Muslim. He could not even say his Friday prayers. Yet, by the terminology of Narendra Modi, he would be a Muslim ruler. These Muslim rulers
Somebody
had
holds some
their
floating.
alliances with Hindu rulers if it was convenient for them, just as they would fight mm, fellow Muslim rulers also if they encroached upon their territory or if they wanted their territory. So these alliances were always for political expedience. There's nothing called religion in any of them. Even when we talk of, say, Aurangzeb and his demolition of temples, which has been well documented and rightly so, Aurangzeb also gave grants to so many temples for their maintenance, for their upkeep. Why is that not talked about? If Aurangzeb demolished certain temples, it was for political reasons.
Right.
Just as when he gave maintenance to certain temples, it could also have been for completely political reasons. So to read any other meaning into it, that there was this feeling of jihad or there was this feeling of brotherhood on the basis of religion, is just complete falsification of history.
In your book, you have, very well structured various aspects, by which you actually argue that while trying to argue that your opening statement, that this sense of feeling like orphans not being protected. We have seen instances of lynching to which you referred to in some. There is also a very concerted bit going on for the last 10 years, the campaign of love jihad. It has been argued that there is a very well thought out conspiracy on part of the Muslim youth who are connected to various other groups of people to befriend Hindu girls, marry them, and then use them as what somebody said, baby producing factories, for which we'll be and then increasing the Muslim population of the country. That is the way fear is instilled in the Hindu mind, in the average Hindu. So to what extent do you think, this is something throughout both your as well as my journalistic career, we have heard this thing being argued all the time that Hindus are becoming a minority in their country. Look at the Muslim, higher population birth rate. That has been argued. Now, when you have been faced with similar that kind of an argument, how have you responded or countered it?
See, I take objection to the very term love jihad. These two things are completely dichotomous, so to say, and it is very disrespectful not just of the Muslim men, but also of Hindu women, that they have no control over their body, they
Right.
cannot decide for themselves, they have no decision making authority. And just because a Muslim boy comes to a Hindu girl and takes her out for coffee or gives her a mobile, she'll fall for him. This is just basically reducing women to the property of men, and as you rightly said, child rearing factories, as Narendra Modi is very happy to talk of, was very happy to talk of in Gujarat, also in
That was in
2002.
2002.
Yeah, in 2002. But this love jihad bogie is not a recent one. This has been raised by the RSS right since 1930-31. And the idea is not to protect the so-called Hindu women or their honor, but to instill fear about the Muslim men, that you have to stay away from them. They are predators. They are going to attack you. Even if they come to you for love, they have something else on their mind. They are not honest guys. And this something like this has been, unfortunately, love jihad and falsification of history has been held in perpetuation by our Hindi filmmakers. You have films like Padmavat, rather than focusing on anything of Alauddin Khilji's actual career. The
Right.
film is based on one poem which was written 200 years after Alauddin Khilji died. And on the basis of that one poem, there is this great danger to the Rajputs from Muslims. And when they talk of Alauddin Khilji in the past, the idea is to browbeat the Muslim in the present, make him embarrassed, make him ashamed about what happened in medieval India, as if he has to atone for whatever Alauddin Khilji or Aurangzeb may or may not have done. And it's something similar with love jihad. It's been going on since 1930, and we are now in 2024. So it's almost 100 years that this bogey has been raised. But how come, if it were true, the population growth rate of Muslims has slowed down almost at par with that of the majority community?
Right. As we move towards the concluding part of our conversation, let us look at sorry. Now let us look at the response of various opposition political parties to the invitation that they have been given by the Temple Trust to come and attend be part of the inaugural ceremony. Everybody knew that the inauguration is going to happen in all probability before the parliamentary elections. The opposition parties have clearly not thought out, they have clearly not done any kind of forward planning. Now, what to the average Muslim mind does this represent? That the BJP does its homework properly, but the other political parties which claim to be secular are not working hard enough.
See,
Do they feel that?
so-called secular parties or opposition parties, they are invariably caught napping. They are not setting the discourse for the country. They are reacting to what the BJP says or what the BJP does. Now, Congress is in a hurry to cover its bases with respect to the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. The debate is not whether Ram Temple should be inaugurated when it is not even near completion. The debate is not whether the Prime Minister of India should go for the inauguration of a temple. The Prime Minister, who swears by the Constitution of India, which makes us a secular republic, whether he should go or not. The debate suddenly is about whether Sonia Gandhi should go to Ram Temple or not, whether Mallikarjun Kharge should go or not. The Congress party lacks the guts, lacks the spine to take on the BJP head on. Just as CPM's Sitaram Yechuri has very clearly said, religion and state should not be mixed. Religion is separate from everyday state politics.
Right.
The Congress has not had the guts to say something on the same lines. And even we saw in 2019 elections, we saw Rahul Gandhi temple hopping from one place to another, wearing sacred thread and everything. And they did not learn a lesson from that. When the electorate of the country gets hardcore Hindutva, why should it choose soft Hindutva? Congress has to give an alternative based on the idea of India, the idea of brotherhood, the idea of sorority, of shared past, of what Jawaharlal Nehru stood for. The Congress today and the opposition parties in general have to talk of socialism, have to talk of taking everybody along, not reducing 80 crore people to holding a bagging bowl for 5 kilograms of cereals every month from the government. The opposition parties, unfortunately, do not have that kind of planning, do not have that kind of a roadmap. So the future for them, and unfortunately for the idea of India, appears dark.
You talked about the opposition parties not mentioning what has happened in the past, the road. Congress has also not reminded people of what Jawaharlal Nehru, told formally the president of the time, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, that you may go to the inauguration of the Somnath temple, but in your personal capacity, not as the president of India. So there is, something which could have been used as a template, but that has not been utilized.
Yeah, I've talked about it in my book.
On the contrary, the RSS actually has always used it as part of the campaign against Nehru, that look, he was so staunchly anti-Hindu that he did not want Rajendra Babu to go and inaugurate the temple, and it was such a just temple. So
But
this
here,
entire,
let me add one thing.
yes,
Here,
please,
instead of reminding people of what Nehru did or
yes.
the advice he gave to Rajendra Prasad, sorry, Congress has been very happy to take credit for the opening of the gates of Babri Masjid, and we have Kamal Nath reminding the electorate in Madhya Pradesh elections that idols were placed in the masjid during the time of Congress. The gates of the masjid were opened during the time of the Congress, and there was a Congress prime minister when the masjid was demolished. He was taking credit for all the activities, saying it happened during the time of the Congress. And there was not even a rap on the knuckles for him by the president of the Congress that we should be talking of Jawaharlal Nehru and his advice to Rajendra Prasad rather than talking of what Uma Bharti or Murli Manohar Joshi or L.K. Advani did on that fateful day in 1992.
Ziya Us Salam, a last question. 22nd of January, the temple is going to be inaugurated. The sword seems to be hanging on the Gyanvapi Masjid in Varanasi and the Shahi, Eidgah in Mathura. Several other mosques also, which we talked about. There appears to be some kind of movement. In such a kind of a situation, also the other kind of Islamophobic campaigns in various aspects, be it mosques preventing namaz, interfaith marriages or relationships in the country, and a general, lynching, these various. So the question is that how does the average Muslim navigate this situation in the future?
Forget the future. For the moment, it's not easy to be a Muslim in Narendra Modi's India. You can't eat the food you want. You cannot pray in your own masjid. You cannot be safe on the streets of India. You are not safe at the airport or at the railway station. We saw what happened in a train and how the media turned it around. We have seen what happened to Akhlaq sleeping at home in Dadri. And we have seen what happened to Bilqis. Even when people were convicted of gang rape and murder, they were released and garlanded. It's not, honestly speaking, it's a scary thought to be a Muslim in today's India.
Now, I've had a question in mind which I wanted to ask for a long time. The character of Salim Mirza in that very famous film Garam Hawa, directed by M.S. Satyu, possibly the most sensitive film made decades ago on the plight of Muslims in post-partition India. The question is that in today's India, would Salim Mirza finally decide to stay in India, or would he follow his relatives to Pakistan. Just let me know what you think about this.
Yeah, that is a beautiful film and a very poignant one as well. Having said that, I am also son of a man who chose India over Pakistan in 1947, and I will die an Indian no matter what, because I will not equate India with the government of the day. Governments come and go. It's my land, it's your land.
Well, very well said, and thank you very much. That it is not the land of the government, it is everyone's India, and we shall possibly live through this period, or whatever it is, the choices made will, everybody is going to be firm to the choices which have been made. Thank you very much for coming and joining me on this very important discussion on something which is actually the elephant in the room, but people really do not speak much about it, that how the Muslims of India are responding to the impending inauguration of the Ram Temple. Thank you very much.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.